So moving on from that, after 3 years there, the Air Force had actually got hold of the 707 from Qantas, and they bought 2 of these aeroplanes, and then they went about crewing them. Now the original 3 crews were trained by Qantas, and they had 3 captains, 3 FOs, 3 flight engineers and 2 aeroplanes, so it was a pretty small outfit. And then after about 6 months, the 3 co-pilots, who had pretty much the same experience as the captains, but they had to be trained as a crew, said, "When are we going to get our command?" And the Air Force said, "Well, you're not. You know, we just need you as co-pilot." I said, "Well, hang on, we were captains on C-130s and that kind of thing, so why can't we have command on this?" And they said, "We don't have a need for you." So the 3 co-pilots promptly resigned. And the Air Force went, "Ooh, we're in trouble." So on very short notice, they had to find a couple of extra pilots who were junior enough that they couldn't resign. Because, so because you had to do 6 years before you were eligible to resign from your service, and I was in that category. So myself and another guy went there very junior, literally on 2 days' notice. Finished flying the Caribou on a Friday, got called into the office of the CO, and he said, "How'd you like to go and fly that 707? He says, "Well, sir, I don't know about that. I haven't even thought about that." He said, "Well, you've got till Monday to think about it because you're starting the course." So, so off I went to this thing, and you know, talk about quantum leap in size and weight. Caribou is 28,500 pounds max takeoff weight. This was 336,000 pounds max takeoff weight. So it was actually heavier than the entire squadron of Caribous, just by way of comparison. Anyway, entirely different role. A lot of people thought it was basically VIP. Only about 25% of our flying at that time was VIP, and the rest of it was just carrying passengers around, military passengers, basically all over the place. We used to do a regular run up to Butterworth, which is in Malaysia, because there was a fairly high military presence there at the time with Army, Navy and Air Force personnel there, and we used to change over staff and families every 2 weeks, so we did that trip a lot. We also did a lot of flying to Hawaii. There was a fair bit of liaison with the US military and also the west coast of the States, and all around Australia, of course. So we're basically like a domestic airline in that respect. When it came to VIP, and this was before the aeroplane was actually designated as a tanker, that actually got modified much later, well after my time. So we were basically just a flying in the blues without the tanker role. We just passenger carrying. The VIP role, as I said, about 20–25% of the flying involved carrying the Prime Minister around, or the Foreign Minister, that sort of thing, to all of their overseas destinations. Domestically, they were still using the BAC 111 and the Falcon, but any time they went overseas, they used this. And the reason they used this aeroplane was because I think it was Whitlam, I think, was Trans-Tasman years ago in the BAC 111. They had an engine failure halfway, and they had to fly a couple of hours on one engine, and he wasn't very happy about that. So he said the next aeroplane we're buying is going to be a 4-engine aeroplane, but he was out of office before they got it. So Fraser was our Prime Minister at the time that they first got this aeroplane.
Was it fitted out like an airliner?
The VIP fit was actually came straight from Qantas. Qantas actually did the fit for Royal Tour. So the forward part of the cabin was VIP cabin, had 6 first-class seats in it. It then had a couple of beds and a change room behind that. It then had a sort of press area where they had, you know, printers and telephones and things, and then they had 40-something business class seats behind that. So it was about a 50-seat aeroplane. The original configuration was 169 economy seats. So it was quite a change. Yeah. Had the privilege of doing a couple of royal tours. Brought the Queen out from England. Once to open the High Court. I can't remember what the other occasion was now, but basically once they got this type of aeroplane, the British government said, "Oh, that's suitable for the Queen to travel in. Okay, the Australian taxpayer can cough up now and come and get the Queen and do it yourself." So we had to. It took the entire squadron to actually do a VIP flight, because we had 2 aeroplanes. In the last stage, we had 5 crews. And to do a non-stop flight to London took 3 crews. So one crew would take it to Singapore, the next one would take it to Bahrain, the next crew would take it to London. And then the other aeroplane was on standby, usually in Colombo, which is about halfway, with the other 2 crews, so they could go in either direction if the aeroplane broke down. Because one thing the British government didn't like was to say, well, the aeroplane's broke and And sorry Queen, but you're going to have to overnight in Bahrain or wherever you're broken. They said no, not acceptable. So it took the whole operation to just do the one tour. Okay. One of the interesting problems we had going back into London actually one time was we were arriving at night back into Heathrow. And in those days the aeroplane didn't have an APU. Does everybody know what an APU is? It's a power unit to power everything on its own. And we'd arranged ground power and everything, but it didn't turn up. Now, our boss had said the Queen and the Duke would like to meet you at the bottom of the stairs to thank you officially as they get off the aeroplane. So as soon as you arrive in London, everyone is expected to shut down everything immediately, jump off the aeroplane, all stand at the bottom of the stairs in order of rank, and the whole crew. And we said, well, what if we don't have any ground power, sir? And he says, do as you're told, that's a bloody order. That was his words. Okay, so sure enough, we rocked up there. It's night time in Heathrow and arrived at the terminal and there's no power. So we shut down number 1, 2, 3 and we looked at each other and said, you know what's going to happen when we turn the last one off, don't you? Well, whatever.
There in the dark.
Shut it down, boom, everything's gone dark. The whole aeroplane's in darkness and there's people scampering around everywhere in the darkness. And yeah, and we left Phil and Betty to it. And, they had to sort themselves out, and so everyone's standing at the bottom of the stairs. And fully about 5 minutes later, they came sort of working their way to the front. And, Phil's leading the way, and then they actually got to the front door, and then all the spotlights hit them and the press and everything else, and they immediately regained their royal composure and did the wave and all that. Now the Queen, she's lovely, and she came to the bottom of the steps and she didn't say anything, and she just said thank you for the flight, thank you for the flight, and all that.
She's got a wicked sense of humour.
She didn't say anything, but the Duke was a little bit less impressed. So I was the first officer, so I'm standing next to the captain, and what he said to the captain was, thank you for the flight. Get those bloody light sticks, will you? And, so we got a right royal bollocking. But anyway, it was good fun. And so basically, I flew that aeroplane for a couple of years, and was fortunate enough, even though I was told I was only going to be a co-pilot, and I did get a command for the last 4 months I was there. Before I went on to my career planning job was to send me off to flying instructor school, go and do a couple of years training on the Mackies over in Perth, and then come back an instructor on this. That was my career planning. That's what